This is another edition of Head On Shaw TV. I'm your host, Ian Holmes. Municipalities right across the country dealing with the funding pinch, always trying to find ways to keep taxes low, keep their citizens happy. And the city of Parksville, it's a very similar situation, but some increased challenges with the fact there's not much heavy industry to offset the reliance on the property taxpayer. And Mayor Chris Burgert is here to break down some creative solutions that the city of Parksville is looking to get a handle on to get themselves in a little bit better of a financial situation. Chris Burgert, three-term city councillor, first term, full term as mayor, also a term as a Qualicum Beach town councillor. Chris, really look forward to breaking down some interesting issues. Thanks for coming to the studio here today.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. And let me just say right off the top that this show is on my PVR list. Not many shows can say that, so I'm a fan. This is great.
Good stuff. Chris, let's start with the idea of a casino. And you pitched this a little while ago to your citizens, the Citizens Advisory Committee as well, getting people in the mix on how this could generate some revenue for the city, because right now people go outside of Parksville that live in the area to go gambling, and you're saying, hey, there's a potential opportunity here for people to gamble here in Parksville and generate some money for the city of Parksville. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's exactly it. You know, we're surrounded by communities with casinos, and since we are a major resort town, 1,200 some plus hotel rooms, why not have something like that in our community? And as you just pointed out, people are already gambling throughout our community. They do it at every convenience store. They do it online through a government website. Why not have something like that here in our community and then obviously reap the benefits of what could be substantial revenue, up to $1 million a year coming into our coffers.
A recent town hall meeting in Parksville yielded a mixed review, but some favorable responses as well from people saying, hey, this is not a bad idea.
Well, I was, really pleased because sometimes as an older demographic, people think seniors are not open to change, but we had a really good meeting and people brought some compelling arguments on both sides of the issue and did so in a very intelligent and appropriate way. And, we're still obviously working through that, but it is one of a number of options that we could pursue.
Where do you think this particular casino issue goes from here in Parksville, Chris?
Well, right now it's with our Citizens Advisory Committee. They will come back. One thing, though, that has to be understood is this is a long-term concept. It's not something that we can decide on our own. We would have to ultimately, if we were to pursue this, go and talk with the province and say, hey, is there a way that we could perhaps be on that list and at some point in the future, hopefully not too far, be able to have something like a casino as a catalyst, though, not just a big square building with a bunch of slot machines in it, but maybe as a catalyst to develop another amenity like a theater or something like that that would help draw both tourists into the area and also create some jobs. Casinos pay well, and they're very professionally run. And in a small community like ours, 12,000 people, even 2 dozen, 3 dozen jobs is a big deal.
The social concerns, that was an element that was brought up at that recent town hall style meeting in Parksville. Speak to that, Chris, because there's certainly a byproduct of gaming in communities around BC.
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of what we're asking the Citizens Advisory Committee to do is to go out and talk to staff sergeants of communities that have these facilities and ask, what is the actual impact? Has it been greater so or less than what was anticipated? And there's no question, there's no wrong answer here. I mean, I think some people from a moral perspective just don't like gambling, and that's okay. What I'm basically saying is, look, I mean, it's here, it's around us already. All this money is flowing down into Victoria. Why not have some of it flow back to us? We're already reliant on gaming grants. A lot of our groups are already reliant on that, and it's more and more difficult to get those dollars these days. So maybe we need to be a little proactive here and take care of our own business.
Another creative approach the city is floating anyways to their citizens is the idea of getting involved in the medicinal marijuana industry. Federal government regulation changes is putting this into the hands of municipalities now to get the zoning in place and set these up with private operators. And maybe Parksville gets involved in that, get their hands into that jar, Chris, and maybe be a partner in that? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, again, I'm trying to keep my end up in the Rob Ford world, of course, so talking about marijuana, talking about gambling, really what we're talking about is a new industry, and it's just emerging now, and it's something that would provide some opportunity. So I take my mayor hat off and I put on my CEO hat, because we're like anything else, we're a corporation, and I ask the question, how can we get involved? There are ways that you can do that. Certainly you want to make sure your zoning's in place, but at the same time we could get really creative and even look to a public-private partnership. If this is something that's going to really fly in the future, we could reap some serious benefits. At the very least, it's industry.
Yep.
It's not the marijuana. I don't care about the marijuana. It's medicinal industry. It's basically like a pharmaceutical business, and it is obviously completely legal. It's actually helping people with really debilitating conditions like MS or someone going through chemotherapy. It brings jobs, it brings some potential for our community, and one of our long-standing goals is to try and boost our industrial sector, of which we have, some, but nowhere near enough. Industry pays 7 times the taxes a resident pays, so we're looking at that. Our advisory committee is once again looking at that as well, and we will at the very least, I think, make sure we have some zoning in place to accommodate it should it arrive. And in the meantime, I'm getting calls from various players in that business saying, hey, you know what, we might be prepared to partner with you. And I hate to say it, but I don't get a lot of calls from industry, so I'm happy to be answering the phone.
And in terms of local reaction, a very heavily retirement population, Chris, have you heard any inclinations from people in your own backyard on how they feel about this idea?
I think I think a lot of folks have a misconception perhaps of what this is all about. They kind of think of that grow show that we're all fearful of that's in somebody's backyard and the guy's buying stuff on the corner, and it really isn't like that at all. I mean, it's here, it's real, and we have a big project, for instance, underway in the great city of Nanaimo, a 60,000 square foot facility. I understand it's through 2 readings, and again, that's going to bring jobs and industry into a city, and why not Parksville?
Some concerns in the construction community with development cost charges. These are the charges that municipalities charge for developers to service with sewers and
growth-related.
All those things that the city is saddled with, those costs as associated with construction. And it was in the 40% range on a potential increase, and now you're saying it lowered down a little bit, but still looking at an increase. Where do development cost charge increases? Where do those stand right now, Chris?
Well, first of all, let me say, if you want to get lots of attention from that sector, suggest a 40% increase in DCCs, because I've certainly gotten lots of feedback. What we're doing is we're going through the process very carefully. We're following best practices. Our goal here is to ensure that we have the funds available so that we can build capacity into our infrastructure so that we can continue to grow as a city. But at the same time, we have to be careful, because if we set it up in a way that no one can actually develop, then we're not collecting any DCCs, and ultimately we're kind of slitting our own throats. So there's a balance that's needed. And what I feel will happen is that number is actually going to be reduced substantially as we go through all of the various projects and apply those best practices and work with our various partners, including residents and business people. And hopefully we'll come up with something that's going to be something that the construction industry can accommodate and continue to do the things that we need them to do, because they're actually very important for our economic base.
Very delicate balance, isn't it, Chris? You have, if you increase it somewhat, then potential costs could be settled down to the consumer if it costs more for construction companies to do business, to get developments going. This is, I'm sure you guys are really playing that teeter-totter pretty carefully right now on this one.
It's exactly that. It's a balance. And, we can, for instance, take those costs and shift them to other sectors. We can put them onto the residential taxpayer and perhaps the commercial taxpayer as well. We don't want to do that. We want to keep our taxes as low as possible. That's what gives us our competitive edge. But at the same time, we want to be able to be a place that, for good development, we can attract investors and make sure that we have some of that activity happening. Lots of folks in sort of between my age and your age that are employed in that sector, and those are the folks that we're really trying to retain and attract into our communities. We need them. And so it is very important to have the right balance here, and that's what I think we'll ultimately achieve.
Speaking of balance, something that you want to get a handle on is the demographic imbalance, which is everyone knows about. It's a community, a retirement community, heavily retirement community, right. More so in Qualicum Beach, also in Parksville as well, but that creates issues in terms of having enough people in the labor force, a number of people that can service the elderly population as well, and just get the general economy going. Chris, what is the city doing? I know it's kind of a regional approach right now to bring younger families in to the Parksville area. What's happening right now to try to make that actually happen?
Well, it's opportunities like we just discussed in trying to create employment for people. We are actually very blessed in one sense, because we do have such an older demographic. It does bring a lot of stability. We've avoided a lot of the pitfalls other communities have faced, like Port Alberni, Powell River, when industry suddenly shuts down and you lose a third of your tax base. Seniors are very stable. They have generally stable incomes, and that's been fantastic. However, We need that vibrancy, we need that vitality in our communities. We need to be a place that can attract families for the very reason you mentioned. We need to have that workforce in place to, well, take care of that aging baby boomer. And so to do that, there are a whole range of things that we're looking at. It's not easy though, right? Again, it means that you need to be able to attract some level of industry. It means that you need to be creative. You need to make sure you have all of the services in place, such as our new health center. That's really important. It's not just for seniors, that's for families, right? And as a father of two, I've spent many a time in clinics with my little ones when they've had, fevers and things like that. And you also need to make sure that you have that sort of right mix. And right now, with an older demographic, we're actually in a state of natural decline in terms of our population because we're obviously not making babies like you would expect. And so we're entirely dependent on immigration, right? Bringing folks into the community to keep our numbers up. Now, we wouldn't want to see our city grow rapidly because we've kind of created a real nice lifestyle, and most of our residents would say this is why we're here. We've moved out of big centers to come and live that nice, really small town feeling lifestyle in a small city. And that's wonderful. At the same time, though, we do need to continue to have some economic activity and some growth, and in doing so, bringing those young people in and immigrants. Right now, you know where we're getting all of our young people from? The Philippines, right? Because there simply aren't the folks here to do some of these jobs, and that's why when you go to certain places, you see all kinds of Filipino folks and other folks there, and that's great. I mean, that's exactly what we're looking to do.
Chris, if Parksville, Qualicum Beach, it's a regional problem here, it doesn't get younger within the next few years, I mean, what kind of spin-off ripple negative effects could that have on the city? It could seem like potentially, I don't want to say catastrophic, but I mean, it could get a lot worse before it gets better if this doesn't turn around to a degree.
If we see a negative growth rate, right, a population decline, we're in serious trouble. We're going to start to lose our services. So right now we're projecting out about a 1.5% growth rate over the next 30 years. That's actually quite reasonable, and it's our challenge to ensure that we can maintain that. And ultimately, the only thing worse than too much growth is that possibility of a decline in population and a loss again of so many of our services, and that can escalate very quickly, and that really isn't the place you want to be.
Chris, I'm hearing a lot about the lifestyle entrepreneur, this burgeoning tech sector, which is growing quite a bit in mid-Vancouver Island, and obviously a very favorable location is Parksville, Qualicum Beach area. Do you see this as something that could potentially take off? Are you hearing about some of these startups starting to come into Parksville? There certainly is a technology base in Parksville. Is that something that maybe could be leveraged locally?
Absolutely, and that's part of what we're doing, working with our partners like the Chamber of Commerce and even the Tourism Association, and sort of drawing those kinds of folks in. You have to really reach out and grab them and say, hey, look at us, look at what we can offer, right? But it's also why it's so important that we maintain our facilities like our airport, for instance. That becomes a key. Those folks, they do tend to travel a lot. They do end up working in Nanaimo and Vancouver and other larger centers, and we have to have those transportation options for them. And there's so many facets that come into this, but lifestyle is what we have as an advantage, and we can offer somebody an incredible lifestyle if they're prepared to move. And if they're in a business such as the tech sector where it isn't maybe as dependent on location as other businesses, then we have an advantage there, and that is what we're pursuing.
Chris, we're flat out of time. Thank you so much for this insight. Very interesting. We'll have you on another time to get to the bottom of these issues. A lot of challenges, but also some opportunities in Parksville. Thanks a lot for the rundown. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Parksville
Mayor Chris Berger with his debut on Head On Shaw TV. I'm Ian Holmes. Thanks so much for joining me as we delve into the issues that really matter on Mid-Vancouver Island.